Usually when we talk about diagnosing a problem, there's this baseline expectation of precision, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like a clear-cut answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like if you fall and break your arm, you go to the hospital, they take an x-ray, and there's that unmistakable jagged white line right on the screen.
Right.
The doctor just points to it and says, broken or not broken, it's binary, it's super clean. But when you step back and think about how you actually perceive the world around you every single day, that kind of clarity just completely vanishes.
It really does. It's messy.
So messy.
Oh.
Suddenly, it feels like that x-ray machine is malfunctioning. We're wandering through this perceptual landscape that is just profoundly murky. Most of the time, we're just skating along the absolute surface of existence, just, reacting to things without ever really diagnosing the root causes of why the world looks and feels the way it does.
That is honestly the perfect way to frame the human condition. Yeah, because we are constantly interacting with the symptoms of reality, the daily frictions, the fleeting moments of joy, the recurring conflicts.
Right.
But we rarely possess the diagnostic tools to understand the underlying mechanics.
And providing you with those tools is exactly our mission for this deep dive. We are unpacking a really profound philosophical framework today that offers, a totally new lens for seeing reality.
It's a huge perspective shift.
It really is. The goal here is to take a two-part journey. First, we're going to look outward and upward, mapping out what is essentially an infinite spiritual progression toward the divine. And then we're going to pivot and look inward, straight at the ultimate roadblock that sabotages that journey. And that's the human ego.
The ultimate roadblock, indeed.
Right. So by the time we're done, you should have a very different understanding of both the deepest roots of existence and, the hidden microscopic causes of your most common everyday arguments. Okay, let's unpack this.
So I think the most logical place to begin is with the default human setting. And in the source material, this is often referred to as the surface gaze.
The surface gaze.
Yeah. When a person simply looks at the world around them, their immediate perception is entirely bound by forms, colors, movements, and immediate events.
I was actually turning this concept over in my head, and the closest modern equivalent I could think of is how we interact with the apps on our phones.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, you open an app, and you see these brightly colored, beautifully designed buttons. You tap the screen, a picture slides into view, and notification sound chimes.
Right, the user interface.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a totally functional experience, but it is fundamentally superficial. You are completely blind to the thousands of lines of code, the complex server requests, the invisible logic gates that are actually generating that experience.
Yeah.
You're just playing with the UI.
That analogy captures the limitation perfectly. I mean, the surface gaze is absolutely necessary to get through the day.
Yeah, you have to know to stop at a red light.
Exactly. But lingering there means you are entirely missing the actual architecture of reality. True contemplation requires a deliberate pause. You have to realize that reality is not limited to its appearance, and, you have to learn to start reading the code.
So how do we start reading the code?
In the framework we're exploring, the very first level of reading that code involves seeing through the lens of divine names, which are often referred to as asma.
Asma. Okay, so to bring that down to earth, there's some incredibly vivid examples of how this shift works in the text. Like you walk outside and look at a flower.
Right.
With the surface gaze, you just categorize petals, stems, and pigment. But when you shift your perception to these names, you stop seeing just a biological organism. You start seeing the manifestation of beauty.
It changes everything.
It really does.
Yeah.
Or you walk through a hospital, and instead of just seeing doctors and patients battling a biological infection, you perceive the search for healing.
Yeah.
You sit down at a dinner table, and you don't just calculate calories, you see provision arriving.
The cognitive shift happening there is monumental. You're no longer cataloging isolated, disconnected objects in a chaotic universe.
You're finding the pattern.
Yes. You are reading existence through unifying principles. You begin to recognize that there's mercy embedded in the beauty of that flower.
Wow.
There is a profound underlying wisdom in the mathematical order of the cosmos. There is deliberate healing in the cure for a disease.
It's like finding the ultimate common denominator. Suddenly the flower blooming in your garden, the sunrise over the ocean, and a painting in a museum are all speaking the exact same language.
They're all expressions of the same name.
Right. They're all expressions of beauty. It begins to reveal this massive sense of unity within multiplicity. The overwhelming chaos of the daily news cycle and the sheer variety of the natural world, they start to look like a single, unified, purposeful system.
But, and this is crucial, the journey of contemplation doesn't stop at recognizing those names.
We have to go deeper.
Oh, much deeper. You don't just stop at the user interface, and you don't even stop at the basic surface level code. As a person deepens their focus, they start to realize that these concepts, beauty, healing, provision, they cannot exist in a vacuum.
They don't just spontaneously generate themselves.
Exactly. Behind every single name lies an active attribute, or sifat.
Sifat. I want to make sure we really hammer down this distinction because it's a subtle but crucial leap. We're essentially moving from asking what is happening to asking how is it happening.
Yes, exactly. It is the shift from observing the effect to identifying the engine driving the effect.
The engine. I like that.
If you observe healing, what your mind naturally has to ask how is this complex biological healing actually being executed?
Right, what's powering it?
Behind the phenomenon of healing, there must be a driving force of power. If you observe the meticulous order of the universe, the precise orbit of planets, the reliable changing of the seasons behind that order is immense knowledge. If you see deliberate choices being made in nature, behind that is will. If you witness life itself, behind that is the fundamental attribute of life.
It's such a structural way to view the world. There's a fantastic botanical metaphor in the source material that really locked this in for me. The idea is that names are like flowers and attributes are like roots.
To create visual.
Yeah, the couplet goes, names blossom like flowers, attributes hide in the root. The gaze that sees the root moves toward the truth.
It captures the dependencies so well. I mean, the flower is what catches your attention. The beauty, the healing, the provision that is all visible and apparent above the soil.
Right, you can't miss it.
But the root is what actually sustains the organism. The root is the power, the knowledge, the will. You rarely ever see the root system, but if you sever it, the flower immediately dies.
That makes total sense.
This contemplative journey is the act of tracing the stem downward, digging past the soil of the surface gaze, and discovering the hidden reality of those roots.
Okay, I love the metaphor, but here is where I genuinely have to push back a little bit.
Go for it.
Tracing the stem down to the root, understanding the how, and recognizing that vast knowledge and immense power are the engines driving the universe that still feels like a strictly intellectual exercise.
I can see why you'd say that.
Like, it feels like taking a master class in theoretical physics. I can understand the mechanics of gravity or the power required to ignite a star, but understanding the math doesn't necessarily make me feel anything.
Right.
So how does this philosophical map bridge the gap between acknowledging these engines in our minds and actually feeling a connection to them in our hearts?
That friction you're feeling is exactly the catalyst for the next massive conceptual leap in the text.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Identifying the how is the domain of the intellect, but the intellect has its limits. To move beyond the mechanical, we cross a threshold into a much more subtle reality called shunat, which can be understood as divine dispositions.
Divine dispositions. Okay, that sounds a bit abstract. Let's ground that.
Yeah.
What is the actual difference between an attribute and a disposition?
Think of it as the difference between the engine and the intention of the driver.
Ah, okay.
What's fascinating here is that shunat are realities that the intellect simply cannot fully compute, but the heart can profoundly sense.
So we're moving from head to heart.
Exactly. If attributes represent the mechanics of reality, shunat represent the emotional and relational dispositions behind those mechanics.
Could you give an example?
Sure. For example, the creation of the cosmos requires unimaginable power. The mind can grasp that power, but creation isn't merely a flex of power. It carries an underlying will to be known.
Oh, wow. That changes the whole tone of it.
Right. Or take the concept of provision. Supplying food to billions of organisms requires an impossibly complex system of knowledge and power.
The logistics of that are insane.
Unfathomable. But provision is not merely a cosmic supply chain. It carries the disposition of generosity. Forgiveness is not merely a transactional pardon. It carries the disposition of mercy.
I see the progression now.
The intellect can map out the supply chain, but it takes the heart to feel the generosity that initiated the supply chain in the first place.
If an Amazon delivery truck drops a box of pasta at my door, my intellect understands the logistics, the power, and the knowledge that got it there.
Right, the mechanics.
But if I'm sick in bed and a friend comes over to cook me a bowl of soup, I'm no longer just seeing a supply chain of calories. I'm feeling their generosity and care.
That is exactly it.
That's the shunat. It's the moment the heart wakes up and takes the lead. There's another great couplet here. Attributes speak to the mind. Shunat, awaken the heart. The one who dives within seeks the whole in every part.
That beautifully encapsulates the transition. We have moved from the surface gaze to the names, from the names down to the roots of the attributes, and from the attributes into the intimate dispositions of the Shunat.
It's quite the journey.
It is.
Okay.
We've shifted from the intellect to the heart. But eventually, even the heart reaches a profound boundary. We arrive at the ultimate threshold, the divine essence, or Zat.
And this is the point where human capacity just completely short circuits. But I want to make sure we really understand why it short circuits. It's not just because we get tired of thinking, right?
Not at all. It short circuits because of the fundamental way human perception operates. Our minds and even our hearts function by drawing boundaries and making comparisons.
Like contrast.
Yes. We understand hot because it is bounded by cold. We understand large by comparing it to small. We require edges, limits, and definitions to comprehend anything.
So we need a frame of reference.
Always. But the divine essence is absolute. It is entirely uncontainable by names, attributes, or dispositions. Because it is infinite, there are no boundaries for the human mind to grab onto. There is no comparison to be made.
So the intellect just stalls out because it's trying to measure something that has no edges.
Precisely.
It reminds me of the first time I went camping out in a truly dark, remote desert.
Oh, I love the desert at night.
Yeah, you walk away from the campfire, look up, and suddenly you see the Milky Way in its entirety. The sheer, crushing scale of billions of stars hits you all at once.
It's staggering.
In that moment, you don't try to calculate the distance between the constellations. Your brain doesn't try to do the math. You just stand there completely silent, utterly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what you're witnessing.
That reaction is the purest definition of awe. When the mind fails to measure the infinite, it surrenders. And contemplation transforms into a state of silent reverence.
The source text phrases it like this. The mind reaches a boundary. The heart journeys beyond. The one who knows their limits finds a silent bond.
Recognizing our absolute limits is not a failure. It is the realization of a profound paradox. Because the divine essence is infinite and we are inherently limited beings, this spiritual journey we are mapping out has no end.
You never actually cross a finish line. The goal isn't to finally arrive and check a box. The goal is simply to earn the privilege of remaining on the path.
That's a beautiful way to say it.
That is an incredibly majestic, liberating way to view human existence. But here is where the reality check comes in.
Oh.
We just spent all this time outlining this expansive, infinite human capacity for awe and spiritual connection. Yet if you look at how we actually spend our days, we are mostly just fighting with strangers over parking spaces, holding on to petty grudges, and, screaming at each other in the comment sections of the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
If our capacity is truly infinite, why are our daily lives so congested with trivial conflict?
Well, that contradiction is exactly why this philosophical framework pivots so sharply into examining the internal human landscape.
This is part B of the essay.
Right. It introduces the concept of the een, or the ego, which is deeply attached to the self. We instinctively search for the causes of our conflicts out in the world, blaming our circumstances or our neighbors. But the truth is, the fracturing of our reality always begins within.
So the ego isn't just a character flaw that makes us a little selfish. It operates like a distorted lens that fundamentally alters our perception of reality, doesn't it?
Oh, it completely warps the architecture of how we experience the world. When the ego successfully places itself at the absolute center of reality, that massive, infinite universe we just explored suddenly collapses into a tiny, suffocating point.
The infinite journey disappears.
Completely. When you are the center of the universe, every other human being ceases to be a complex fellow traveler on a shared path. They are immediately reduced to a binary function.
What do you mean?
They are either your supporters or your rivals.
Wow. It's like living your life as the main character in a movie, and you're constantly casting every single person you meet based solely on how they serve your plotline.
Yes.
If they agree with you, they are a loyal ally. If they slightly inconvenience you, they are the antagonist. You strip them of their own infinite depth.
And the most devastating consequence of this inward collapse is how it shifts our fundamental relationship with truth. The moment the ego takes the throne, the core question driving our behavior changes. We stop asking what is true, and we passionately begin asking, am I right?
That distinction right there, that is the key to unlocking almost every argument I've ever had. What is true versus am I right?
It explains so much, doesn't it?
It really does. When two people are asking what is true, They are standing side by side, looking at the problem, trying to trace the stem down to the root. They are on a shared quest for reality.
Exactly.
But the second I shift to am I right, I am no longer interested in reality. I am only interested in defending my ego's user interface.
It is an intellectual and spiritual dead end. When the need to be right supersedes the desire for truth, truth simply withdraws.
It doesn't even fight you.
No, it doesn't fight you. It just quietly leaves the room because the ego is consuming all the available oxygen.
The text has a warning for this. When I rises in speech, truth falls into retreat, the ego takes the throne, and hearts lose their beat.
That is incredibly stark, and this dynamic isn't just an abstract theory, right? It plays out aggressively in the two main arenas where we actually live our lives.
Inside our families and out in broader society. Let's look at the family dynamic first. Why is the family unit considered the ultimate crucible for the ego?
Well, you would think it's easier to drop your ego around the people you love compared to, say, a competitive workplace.
Yeah, you really would.
But the family is where our expectations are the most deeply entrenched and often completely invisible to us. Conflicts in a household are rarely about the superficial trigger.
It's not about the dishes.
It's almost never actually about the dishes being left in the sink or the tone of a text message. It's about the unseen demands of the ego. There's a brilliant diagnostic translation of human behavior to consider here in the text.
Okay, lay it on me.
When someone in a relationship complains, "I am not understood enough," what is frequently driving that sentiment is the unspoken demand, "I want to be central."
Oh, wow. That forces a deeply uncomfortable self-audit.
It really does.
Yeah. When I feel frustrated or misunderstood by someone I love, I have to stop and ask myself, am I genuinely seeking mutual understanding? Or am I just angry that they aren't currently orbiting around my emotional needs?
Right.
Am I punishing them because they stopped acting like a supporter?
It requires immense vulnerability to admit that. Love can only truly expand and breathe when the ego steps back and allows the you to fully appear. As long as the focus remains obsessively on the I, the relationship is trapped in a claustrophobic space.
Another great line from the text on this: love narrows with I, expands when you appears. The one who leaves the self outgrows hidden fears.
The ego builds a tiny room, and love just suffocates inside it. But the moment you let go of that desperate need to be central, you open the door, and suddenly there is infinite space for the relationship to actually grow.
So true. Now, if we zoom out from the living room and look at the macro level, we see millions of these tiny rooms interacting. How does the unchecked ego shape the fate of entire civilizations?
It dictates their rise and fall with alarming predictability. The historical lens here is fascinating. If a society is dominated by the ego, it inevitably fractures.
Because everyone is just looking out for themselves.
You end up with millions of competing eyes, all obsessively asking, "Am I right?" and viewing their neighbors primarily as rivals. In that environment, there's no capacity for shared truth, only endless, exhausting power struggles. The fabric of society just tears itself apart.
But the alternative is what creates a mature society. And a mature society, in this context, has nothing to do with having the fastest microchips or the most robust stock market.
Precisely. A civilization matures strictly to the degree that its citizens learn to discipline their egos.
It's an internal metric.
Yes. When individuals regulate that desperate need to be central, they create the necessary space for genuine cooperation and the pursuit of a shared reality.
Like the text says, those who serve the ego leave ruins in their wake. Those who guard the trust build futures that awake.
You can look back through any history book and clearly see the literal, smoking ruins left behind by empires and leaders who were entirely consumed by the ego.
Yeah, history's full of them.
The enduring leaps forward. The futures that actually awake always require individuals who are willing to sacrifice their need to be right in order to look past the surface gaze together.
So what does this all mean for you, navigating your day today? We've covered a massive philosophical landscape, moving from the infinite depths of cosmic awe all the way down to the petty argument you might have had in traffic this morning.
But it is all intrinsically connected.
It really is. It all distills down to a stark daily choice about how you decide to process reality. Tomorrow morning, you can wake up and operate entirely from the ego. You can live in that claustrophobic, narrowed world where every person you meet is either a supporter to be used or a rival to be defeated. You can spend all your precious energy fighting tooth and nail to prove that you are right and watch the truth quietly slip out the back door of your life. Or you can choose to pause. You can look past the brightly colored buttons of the surface gaze. You can start searching for the profound names underlying the events in your life. Trace them down to the powerful roots of the attributes, and let the generosity and mercy of the shoe knot awaken your heart. You can trade the exhausting, endless defense of your ego for the quiet awe of the infinite journey.
Which brings to mind a final provocative thought to carry with you.
Oh, let's hear it.
We explored how the journey toward the divine essence has no end, because we are limited and the path is infinite. And we've seen how civilizations only truly flourish when the ego is disciplined.
Right.
If we synthesize those two realities, it changes our definition of progress. Perhaps the ultimate mature human civilization isn't some gleaming sci-fi utopia that we are frantically trying to build so we can finally arrive and declare victory.
Then what is it?
Perhaps the greatest possible civilization is simply a society of people who have finally let go of their egos, who have stopped tearing each other apart over who is right, and who are utterly content to just walk that infinite silent path together.
Wow. What a profound reframing. Instead of fighting to own the ab, we're all just standing side by side marveling at the beauty of the code.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep looking past the surface, keep tracing the stems down to the roots, and we'll catch you next time.